Is that the magic word?
Yeah.
Reports, business report, Mr. Soto. Where is he?
Is he on the phone?
Mr. Soto?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
well, you know what, let's go to the next one.
Okay.
Let's have him come in here because
Can he come to
we've
the
got
meeting?
some things to discuss regarding finances. Have him come in here.
All right, I'll be right there.
Yeah, we'll come back.
Thank you.
Let's do Human Resources and Student Enrollment Report. Ms. Cox.
So good evening, Mr. President, board members, community. So I'll start with our enrollment. That is currently at 3,856 students. And so I also would like to just recognize 3 employees for their service to the district. They will be either resigning or retiring. Mr. Francisco Cruz, he works with the maintenance department. He has been with our district for 18 years, and he will be retiring. Mr. Jose Pedrosa, he was our district mail courier. He was with the district for 8 years, and he will be resigning, or he has resigned. And Socorro Medrano, she's a bus driver, and she has been with us for 13 years. So I'd like to thank them for their years of service with us. And due to resignations and or positions that we did not hire for in previous years, we're finding that we need to hire bus drivers and possibly maintenance staff. So you might see those postings. We may bring them up at the next board meeting. Sub-custodians and IAs are also an area that we are needing right now. And so those are positions that we may be hiring for at the next board meeting.
Okay, very good, members of the board. Any questions regarding it? Dr. Gomez?
Did Mr. Pedrosa, did he get disability? Or you don't
Not that
know?
we know of, no.
He just is resigning.
Yes, he had to. Yes.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you for that, Denise. We'll move now to the business report, Mr. Soto. And one of the things you may want to start off with is she mentioned that we were down to 3,885 students, and you may want to talk about that as it relates to finances, okay?
Yes, sure. Good afternoon, board president, board members. As you heard, we keep losing students. And like I said on the previous board meeting, we're going to do a budget revision. And that revision, it's going to be around $1 million that we have to reduce our budget because of enrollment. We don't know for sure if it's going to be until the December 1st, or probably we have it before. I would like for you to entertain a special meeting to approve the budget revision, but we'll talk about that later. It is concerning, yes, about the losing students. It's not a problem that only the DUSD is facing. It's all over the state. It's all over the nation because most of the parents are choosing to withdraw the kids and put them on some kind of online platform or schools. For us, as you know, it's close to 200 students, if not probably we already hit that mark already. Some of the districts are, of course, the size of the districts are much bigger, but Sahuarita, for example, they have lost 600 students. And that's a lot of money. For us, in our specific case, as you also know, we have a lot of vacancies open, like Mrs. Cox just said. But of course, it's getting to a point that we need to replace or open up those positions to fill at least 1 or 2 for every department, because some departments are getting hit hard. Again, for me to do the revision, it's more of see what's coming and to have to start from ground zero again, saying this is what we have right now, and look at the actual vacancies we have, and have some kind of strategic planning on what positions we're going to be filling with the kind of resources we have. Again, me showing you the report right now, as you can see, yeah, there's some balance left that is not encumbered, but the main reason is those vacancies. Again, once we start talking about the possibility of going to hybrid, and then of course we're going to have to need a lot more help in the classroom with potentially more IAs, but we also talk about the possibility of using the CARES monies to have temporary positions for those IAs until the end of the school, or if the board decides to actually go traditional before the end of the school year, then we're going to have to look into those. Again, as you all know, positions being paid out of grants are subject to when that grant ends, the position ends. So those are the things that we're going to have to clarify to the potential hires for those positions, that maybe at the end of the year there's not going to be a position for them. But again, it is concerning, and we're going to have to. I'm already looking forward for the next school year, because logical is less funding, less kids, less staff. Because again, 85 to 90% of the whole budget is salaries and benefits. We also had a meeting with the benefits. The way it's looking is potentially another 10% increase on the benefits for next school year. But again, that's something that we will start talking about with more detail probably in February and March. The beauty of this is that I can do a revision now in December, and I can do another revision if needed in March or April, once we know for sure how we're going to end up the year and the adjustments that we have to make. So with all that said, any questions on the report,
Members of the board?
or any questions overall?
Yeah, how much money do you have left in that, what do you call it?
And the CARES Act? Well, and like we talked on last board meeting, we have that money, and then the state gave us the enrollment stabilization grant. What we're doing now is we were using the CARES money, which we got awarded $1.8 million. But with this grant, we still don't know how much the state is going to give us. I'm just going to use a number and say, let's say they give us $700,000. I'm going to journal out all of those expenses that we did on the CARES Act and put it on this grant, because we only have until December. They give us until December 30th to spend this grant. CARES monies, we still have until December? Following year, September of 2021. So we're still going to have that cushion and potentially use those monies for the temporary positions that we need to fill.
But right now, I think what Dr. Ed is asking is, with what we've spent so far out of the CARES, without taking into consideration the journaling, is we have roughly about how much?
$950,000 that we have spent in computers, supplies, PPE equipment, and all of that stuff.
Mr. Ramos, Mr. Sabal, any questions regarding the financial report?
No.
You mentioned benefits, and you said they're going to go up. How much does the district pay to furnish and all the coverage, the insurance coverage for the employees?
I think last year it was including all of the employees, because again, we have employees being paid out of different grants and M&O, but overall benefits, it was $2.2 million.
But that portion, I'm talking about the portion that the insurance, the health insurance is furnished 100% to the employees.
That's
Correct.
it.
That was
That's
it?
it.
That's what it
Yes.
cost? Now, on that, just kind of hitchhiking on that, we know we look good financially this year, right? We know we hope we can make it regardless of all the circumstances.
Correct.
But what about next year? Because of everything that's happening now, how is that going to affect next year's revenues and our ability to do the things that we're doing now and being able to sustain it? I think the board needs to hear this now, so because we're already in November, we're going to start talking about other things very soon.
Correct.
And so just kind of give us a background.
Yeah, like I just said, revenues, of course, depend on enrollment, and I won't have a good picture of what the enrollment is going to look like until probably February or March. we're still hoping that if we go into hybrid or some other kind of learning platform, that we're probably going to gain some kids. We're just hoping that. But there's not that many kids that went to the charter schools or anything. But again, less students, it's less staff. So, and 85 to 90% being salaries and benefits, of course, that's something that we need to look at. And that's why we are being very cautious on what positions we're going to fill right now, because so we can sustain it for next year in case. But again, as it is right now, of course, we're going to be short. Let's say if the enrollment stays like this right now, we're going to be short $1 million next year, because that's what we're losing now with that enrollment. So again, I will have to probably adjust and look at the positions first, and of course look at the benefits. We're still hopeful, very hopeful, that 10% will be reduced, but our consultant was kind of confident on saying it's going to be in between the 9 and the 12%. So an increase.
Well,
We're going out for a bid though. That's another. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing, because you get different offers from different companies. But I would really hate to switch companies at this point. We have been with Blue Cross Blue Shield for so many years. But again, I mean, if we have to, then we have to. That's another option. I'd rather switch companies than start charging employees for health insurance that we haven't done in so many years. But that's a big possibility.
The board, of course, wants to do that. Mr. Lindman,
Yes.
Dr. Gomez, myself, Mr. Ramos, Mr. Zabal, we're for that. But
I don't know what's going to look like for
when you look
increases.
Yeah, when you look at that, would you say it was 1.2 million?
Yes.
And then we're going to lose a million, maybe, as far
Or
as the
more.
loss of enrollment.
Right.
That might be something, along with other things, that we need to consider whether or not we can sustain it or not next year.
Correct.
And I think, while we're talking about it, it's important to note that the raises we gave last year, we're 100% committed to that, and we want to do it, but we just want to make sure that we're able to do it. And this is having a great impact on our ability to
Yeah.
do some of those things next year. Go ahead.
Keep in mind that what we did last year is because we got extra funding from the state.
Right.
For sure, we're not going to be able to give a 5% increase to teachers
Right.
or classify employees. The minimum wage is increasing starting January. Luckily enough, we don't have people making
Less
the
than.
$12 an hour. They're at $12.30. But that's something that at least I will have to do and propose for next school year, that 1.25% increase to the minimum wage. But again, I don't have a figure right now to give you and say this is how much it's going to cost us, because again, I don't know how many people we're gonna keep for next year. But that's something that by law we'll have to do. We don't have to do it now in January, because we don't have anybody making 12 or 12.15. They're making 12.30 or above. But starting in July with the new fiscal year, we will have to address that and change the classified and the potentially certified salary schedule.
And then again, just for information for the board, you just mentioned hiring temporary, probably at-will employees for, as IAs, right?
Correct.
And you said 15?
Yes, 15.
I didn't give a number, but it's around that number.
And
that we're
that money
potentially
will
looking
come
at.
out of the CARE Act?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Yes, and I think it's just important for you all as a board to understand, and for our stakeholders, that our budget is based, next year's budget will be based on this year's enrollment. And that's why that is just such a critical piece. While we are okay right now, as it is to, as we say, to pay the bills for this year and make sure that we are covered up until the end of our fiscal year with salaries and expenses and programs, we can do that with what we have. But looking forward to next year, that's where we really have to be careful and have strategic plan once we know where we're going to end with our enrollment. Because I will tell you, districts are talking, and we're not, we're going to include ourselves, furlough, definitely cutting down on positions that are not really needed anymore, and reducing expenses. And of course, the last piece of all our budget and expenses is obviously anything doing with academics and instruction are the last things that we want to touch, which could be instructional programs, instructional support staff, and definitely teachers. But anything outside of that realm, we start looking at positions and budget cuts and where are we going to make ends meet. So the more we lose in enrollment due to this unprecedented year, the more concerned school districts get. And we're not alleviated from all of that stress either, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Now,
good, and thanks for that. Go
just
ahead.
another point that I want to make is I'm not sure if Prop 208 passed already, which I think it did. I don't know how that's going to affect us because I know there's going to be more funding for schools, but again, we're on the hands of the state. I don't know how that's going to affect us. I'm hoping, and obviously positively, not negatively, but again, I don't know. The 207, the marijuana one, I think most of those monies are going to go to just community colleges, not K-12 education. But the 208 is supposed to help us out. We don't know for sure how that's going to be.
And theoretically, 207 was supposed to.
Right, but that's going to
majority
community
go
colleges
to
only. Yeah,
the
but-
funding for
yeah.
schools. Okay, Dr. Gomez.
When we gave the 5% last year, okay, let's say it's a X amount, okay. But even if we didn't have enough, as much money as we had this year, but we would never take away that raise,
No,
right?
no. We're not talking. Everything stays the same. If there's no increase, but they get to keep the salary they have this year. Yeah, there's no. Yeah,
That's why the question always is, can we sustain
it. Yeah.
Just sustain it. And that's a good question because we don't
Because
want
it's
to send a
forever to
message
go
out there
on.
that
Yeah.
we can't.
Yep.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Thank you, Mr.
Ready?
Soto.
You're welcome.
Item A, discussion on the distance learning update. Ms. Samanigo.
Just a brief update. We are in week 2 of providing more virtual instruction with the students 4 days a week since October the 26th. And what I've heard from teachers and parents and some students actually is that it has been a very positive change. Not for everybody. We have some parents struggling to say, oh, now my child has to go to school with a teacher 4 days a week. I'm not at home. I have employment responsibilities and I can't be at home. So we're trying to accommodate as many, but at least in the aspect of instructional purposes, teachers' comments were that the transition was seamless. They had an opportunity to have more in-depth conversations with more students because some high school kids in some classes were 3-5 students in a class. Now they have, let's say, 15. Whereas middle school had maybe 12 kids in a class, now they have their full, 27 kids in a class. Now, that's on any good day, because what we are seeing and continuing to see is a challenge of attendance. And so that is an ongoing challenge, not unique to DUSD by any means. And so students are sometimes picking and choosing which classes they attend. I heard from the middle school task force today that it just seems that if the kids like the teacher, they will attend. If for some reason the students, not that they dislike the teacher, but like them a little bit less, may not show up for their virtual instruction. So attendance is definitely something we are continuously having discussions on how we can accommodate our parents from not being counted absent and hopefully being involved in the academics. And so that has been going on. We do have more students attending the learning spaces safely. I will add, students are being supervised and supported academically by the instructional support staff. And at some sites, some teachers are pulling their students into their classroom, not for in-person instruction. So I want to clarify that this doesn't mean that a teacher is giving in-person instruction to those kids, but in order to support students a little bit further, some teachers are pulling 2-3 kids that are their students who are attending the learning spaces. Not every teacher's doing it, and it is not a requirement, but some teachers are pulling them and seeing. I've walked into many classrooms where I see the teacher teaching virtually, and there may be 2 students in the class that are actually attending virtually as well. They're just in the classroom with the teacher. So I saw the teacher saying to the kids at home, you have 2-minute break, log back in 2 minutes, and then she gets up and then goes and sees what these kids are doing over here. And so that is being easily managed and very much appreciated. And the kids that have that opportunity are really liking at least being in the classroom for an hour and a half, not for in person, and then they go back to the safe learning spaces. So that is happening. I have just updated our distance learning plan with ADE. It got approved. It is posted now on our website. And the only change that was specifically addressed was the fact that we continued online. And if you take a look at our website, the distance learning plan says that we are online at least until December 23rd. We have it'll be the intention and recommendation of me as a superintendent to hopefully be allowed to return to hybrid starting in January. So I've said that, but it is specified that only if a governing board approves students to return to hybrid and the situation, in Douglas or support from or guidance from the local health department allows it to. And if we are allowed to return or start hybrid, then in that section of the distance learning plan, I've addressed how that's going to look like. Kids will be in person 2 days a week and 3 days online, and that parents will still have the flexibility and opportunity to keep their children online the whole year long. So that information is on the distance learning plan. Every time we have a change, I have to send it as an update to ADE, and then once it gets approved, then we can upload it onto our website. So not much change there. I just wanted to inform ADE that we are still online and that we will at least until December 23rd, if not further along. That's all I have as far as the distance learning update. Teachers are working and students, and we did see an increase in the need to attend for a safe learning space. And as a matter of fact, if we see a student struggling with attendance, the schools are recommending to the parents and saying, look, your child hasn't attended. Maybe it's because of lack of support, or simply there's nobody there to supervise. So the children are just saying, yes, mom, I did attend. Well, in actuality, I didn't. Would you be interested in a learning space? So the schools are actually reaching out to the parents as well. But it's going well right now.
If everything continues the way it is, and we don't have a spike in cases, then the plan is to after December the 23rd to go to hybrid. I mean, so we should start thinking about transitioning
into that. And what I would say is probably at our December board meeting, at least have that discussion and make that recommendation to the board and up for vote, because we need at least that month to get prepared, communicate it to our families that want to send kids to hybrid starting in January, because we may not have very many. And but if we do, definitely, as I mentioned in one of the reports, then we need to start having again the discussion of, okay, if I have 5 students attend and 15 that are online, how am I going to teach both simultaneously? And so there's a lot of planning and preparation that goes into that.
Members of the board, any questions or comments regarding her report, Dr. Gomez? Mr. Ramos, any questions or comments regarding Ms. Samaniego's report?
No.
Mr. Sabal?
Oh, thank you.
One thing, if I may add, that I forgot, now that we are having more students attend all at once, so by joining Group A and Group B, one of the difficulties that we've seen and heard from teachers is that you had 10 students join the class and now you have, let's say, 20. So what's happening with the system is that because there's more students joining in at the same time, teachers are having camera issues, not per se the teacher itself, but let's say 5 students' cameras all of a sudden freeze or blank out, but it doesn't mean that the students are still not in the class. For some reason, the camera function, and I will have Mr. Durazo explain that a little bit further, and he did explain it to us very well, because it's not a matter of the internet infrastructure that we have, but it's more of the computers from the teacher's perspective, right, Mr. Durazo? Right? So we are trying and testing it out, and they switched up computers in one, or will switch up the computer with one teacher's classroom to see if a newer computer will take care of that glitch. But it's not our internet. We found that out, so we're working on that.
What, in the discussion,
Mm-hmm.
what are the feelings of the teachers going back in January? I mean, of course, they know that that's the plan.
Yeah, I mean,
How are they feeling about that?
every task force obviously has had that conversation and continues to have that conversation. I'm pretty sure the sentiment is still kind of, 60-40, 50, 50-40, or 50-60. And so we will continue to have those conversations with our staff. We know that at least now moving forward with winter season, and, influenza in some cases, could be COVID and could not be COVID, but the sentiment is probably still there. And we will continue having those conversations, because it is something that I plan on recommending, and hopefully, the situation allows us to allow some of those kids that want to be back in school, or that the parents want to send them to school, to be in school. And those that don't want to, they can still stay at home and get the same education.
Mr. Lindeman, any discussion, questions?
No, thank you very much for all the information.
I mean, Dr. Gomez. Mr. Ramos or Mr. Sabal, any questions, discussion, comments?
Not this time.
No, no.
Okay, we're going to move item 3L to the next item on the agenda for convenience of some people they're having a conflict with an activity. So if we want to get their input, we have to move that now. So we're on L, it's 3L. Which is discussion action on the approval of Douglas High School athletics. Ms. Saldiego.
And Governing Board, the reason we're bringing this to you is, if you recall, the only season that was approved was fall winter sports for DHS. And shortly after that got going, then we started getting requests for winter sports to start their practicing in phase 1 and phase 2. And so in talking to Mr. Ortega and Mr. Walker, and for the sake of not bringing every season to a board meeting or having to have a special board meeting, I recommended to them to give us something to present, as we can take a look at the whole rest of just DHS athletics. If you took a look at the background information, winter sports include DHS boys and girls basketball, there's boys and girls soccer, and wrestling. Then you go into the spring, and you have tennis, baseball, and softball. And every single one of those has that phased-in approach where we start in small groups, as it was presented for for fall sports. Following that same kind of protocol. What I discussed with both administrators is that, if approved and given the authority to directly work with DHS administration on a season by season or even sport by sport case, that if we run into any issues concerning definite positive cases or an outbreak, or that they are not following the guidance and protocols, then with my guidance and my direction, then we either shut down or we take a break. And what we've seen so far in just the time that we've had sports, there has been a few cases that have already come up. Luckily, either the students were not in attendance, to say that they brought the virus on to other students, and so there's been contact tracing. But in the case of other schools, I will use the example of one high school, and they had a football athlete come out positive, and so that school said, okay, no football for the next 2 weeks. And so that's the approach that, schools are taking. With the guidance of obviously the local health department. So I do have Mr. Ortega and Mr. Walker on the phone for questions and for us to be able to discuss what recommendations or if you have any questions on what they have presented.
Where did the protocol for all these come from? It's pretty thorough. It's
Yes,
well defined and it's reasonable. But where did that come from? Is that initiated locally or is that standard throughout the state?
Mr. Ortega, you want to take a answer to that, please?
Yeah, good evening, members of the board. I appreciate and thank you for accommodating us. I'm here at our volleyball match right now. But to answer your question, Mr. Verain, a lot of that information, those phases, and all of those guidelines come from our coaches through research, assistance, and then they're also kind of getting ideas from the other team sports from the fall. So what worked well for them, they used as assistance for the winter to kind of tailor it towards their own sport.
Okay, very good. We appreciate you being on the phone, Mr. Ortega, especially performing your duties out there. Mr. Lindeman, do you have any questions or comments regarding that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just had one question. Mr. Ortega, have any cases arrived with our students at all this fall?
Yes. Yes, as I explained. Oh, go ahead.
I don't know if I could get too into specifics, but we have come into situations, but have it handled through HR. We have our COVID liaison, which is our athletic trainer, Mr. Nelson. Any kind of issues or concerns that we've come across, we've had a good chain of command as far as communication goes. And, we go up to the district level and communicate with Mrs. Cox, who's our district COVID liaison and things like that. But any situation that we've had or encountered, or even just a concern or a question, we make sure that we follow that chain of command thoroughly.
And then what actually was the action that we followed when we found a case that was positive?
Ms. Cox, do you want to answer that thoroughly since she is our COVID-19 liaison? She earned a title this year, a new title.
We like to call ourselves the COVID Queens because we're dealing with this every single day. So the protocol for students is that if it's reported, it would be reported directly to, of course, the coach, who then informs Mr. Ortega, and then we go through a form that the point of contact. I think for athletics, it's Mr. Nelson. They have to contact the parent. We get information. Sometimes it could be they've been exposed to somebody who has COVID. Other times it may be that the student has COVID. So it just depends. It's on a case-by-case basis, and we're learning every day on how to best deal with the situations that we're presented with.
I guess my question is that that didn't shut down then the whole sports that was going on.
We haven't had, luckily, knock on wood, we haven't had a case like that.
Okay.
So 2 or more students, if it's 2 or more students at the same time, then that would be an outbreak, and then we would deal with that differently, but we haven't had that situation. They've been isolated cases.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez.
Okay. How did you know that this student was positive?
They informed the coach. Okay, so they informed the coach. The coach then informed Mr. Ortega. So then he calls me, and then we do a contact tracing. We contact the parents. They have to give us the information.
No. But did that student come out and said, I'm tested positive?
Yes.
Okay, so he could have gotten that anywhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
He could have been inoculated with the virus
Yes.
wherever,
Yes.
right?
From
okay.
home.
So once you knew it, then you isolated him, and he couldn't participate for 2 weeks or something.
Yes.
Good.
And we need to get results from either the doctor, negative results from either the doctor or the health department. They have to clear them in order for them to come back to join the sport again.
Good.
Okay.
Mr. Lindeman, do you have another
No,
comment?
that was another follow-up, and thank you, Dr. Gomez, for that.
And I'll tell you, that's the same that we do for our employees.
Yeah.
Okay, so we follow the same protocols for employees.
Okay, Mr. Sabal or Ramos, do you have any questions or comments regarding?
I just have one question. If the student that tested positive, and when he tests negative, is that just going to be one test, or does he have to do at least a couple of days later another test to make sure that it's still negative before he goes back?
Good afternoon, Mr. Ramos. No, it is only one test, and the health department or the doctor have to clear them for that to return. So it's only one test.
Okay.
Okay.
And it is in written format, the documentation that is sent by the whole health department or their doctor. And it does say, has cleared and has had the 10-day or the 14-day isolation and, can return to, school or practice or whatever. So there is the test, and then there's that written documentation that is expected before they can return.
Okay, members of the board, so as far as the question is concerned about the fall sports, we have a couple of options. The first one being, of course, to continue the way we have been and leaving that decision administratively up to the superintendent, and no action need be taken. We can just say we continue in the same mode we did with the prior authorization we gave her. And the other option is that we come back intermittently, and I don't recommend we do that, and unless the superintendent feels that there's a need based on the recommendation from the high school administration, that we come back. So want to just leave it that we proceed that way administratively, and then all of the other questions could come up later if need be.
Yeah, Mr. President, I believe we should just continue the way it is. Things have been going well despite the couple of cases, but it hasn't been an outbreak, so I believe it can continue.
Okay, I just had a question. When is the winter sports going to start?
Mr. Ortega?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gomez, for your question. So the official AIA start date for winter sports is November 9th, so that's this upcoming Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ortega, do you know of any school that actually is shut down? And I think there was a little bit of a misunderstanding. I had understood that Nogales had shut the schools down for a week after they had started, and I'm not talking about athletics academically, but it's all part of the same scenario. Do you know of any school that's shut down or after having started that they've just said we're not playing anymore, Mr. Ortega?
Just the example of the situation that you just brought up as far as Nogales. I don't know any details or how things come up or go about over there or what their process is, but that's all I know at this point as far as that school.
Okay, Bruce, do you know what happened in Nogales? Can you help us out here a
I
little?
can't help you out with Nogales, but Fort Thomas shut down volleyball and football for 2 weeks because that impacted Valley Union, who I cover.
Oh, okay.
So that Alfreda's game with Fort Thomas been canceled in football, and they canceled volleyball as well because a player there tested positive, and they shut them down for 2 weeks. So Fort Thomas, I can vouch for. Nogales, I have no idea about.
So the Fort Thomas student was one that tested positive. Okay.
And normally what happens under those situations, and it's very similar to what could happen in a classroom. And so if you have one student that's in an outbreak, let's say in football, as I believe it is was the case in Nogales, and I don't have all the details either, but because of the contact sport in itself, and probably from guidance from their local health department, and then obviously the administration, it was hard to determine in that football scenario the contract tracing. So it was probably the recommendation and easiest to say, for 2 weeks, we have to shut down for the safety and welfare of the kids. In a classroom setting, it's a little bit easier because you can, kids are not on top of each other, there's no physical contact. So in the case of a classroom, it may be, okay, let's look at who that student was in close contact with. Was it the teacher? Was it, the students around them? And then you do the contract tracing and determine, along with the local health department, if there is a need to completely shut down that classroom, because that has happened in schools already. They'll just shut down the kinder classroom, for example, for 2 weeks, but the instruction still remains. Teacher is sent home to do the online instruction, and all the kids are at home, but it doesn't shut down the rest of the school. And so it's very similar to the protocols that we have to follow in a classroom setting.
Okay, are you okay with proceeding the
Yes.
way we just discussed? All right, Mr. Ortega, Mr. Walker, thank you for your contribution. And we'll move now to item 3B, and that's discussion action on the approval of certified hire.
Mr.
Ms.
President?
Samaniego?
We skipped item 2A, consent agenda.
Let's see.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, we also, we didn't do call to the public. Did we have anything
No,
on
we
call to
didn't.
the public? Okay, so now we're on item,
Two, consent agenda 2.
got it.
There was no action on that item about athletics?
No, so what the discussion, or Mr. Cesar is asking if there was no action taken on that item of athletics.
No, there's no action taken on that
So we will
because it wasn't,
presume the same way that I've been working with DHS administration.
right,
Okay,
right.
good.
Okay, so now we're at item 3B.
2A,
2A.
consent agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. I thought we did that, but that's okay. Approval of the following consent agenda items. Expense vouchers 1, 2, and 3 as listed. Mr. Lindeman, will you move to,
I move to approve the consent agenda items.
is there a second?
Second?
By Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, now we're at 3B. Discussion action on approval of certified hires. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, one teacher under, for RBMS Middle School.
Is that person certified?
That person is under an emergency teacher certification and has been given a couple of years to take care of a deficiency. But
Okay.
So yes, emergency teacher is the certification.
Okay, because it's English and
Yes.
that's important. Any questions? Entertain a motion?
I move to approve the certified hire.
It's second
Second.
by Mr. Sabal. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item 3D, discussion action, 3C, discussion action on the approval of athletic hire. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, this is a girls' basketball assistant coach, Miss Camila Altry, a Douglas High School teacher.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman.
I second Sabal.
Second by Mr. Sabal. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item 3D, discussion action on approval of classified hires. Ms. Samaniego.
Okay, and before we get to that approval, I am removing a bullet point number or bullet name, the third name on that list. So it will only be the first 2 items on that approval of classified hires. So these are ESS instructional aides for Joe Carlson Elementary and again, special ed students.
Okay, so then I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2 names. The first 2 names is listed there
I move to approve the first 2 names as listed.
by Mr. Lindeman.
Second?
Second by Dr. Gomez. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burry?
Yes, item 3E, discussion action on the approval of classified resignations and retirements. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, these are the 3 that Mrs. Cox recognized at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, the board wants to thank them all
Yes.
for their service, especially those longstanding employees. Entertain a motion to approve
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman.
Second Sabal.
Sabal.
Second by Mr. Sabel. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabar?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bahrain?
Yes. Item 3F, discussion action on the approval of addendums. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, these addendums are all the CTE teachers and who run a club and as guided and required by the federal Perkins grant that they get, and for running each department or each career and technical club.
For discussion, entertain a motion to get
I move to approve.
by Mr. Lindeman.
I second for discussion.
Okay, discussion, Mr. Sabal.
Yeah, Ms. Samaniego,
Yes, Mr. Sabal?
how come you have, there's duplications and some of them are entered 3 times? Why?
So the best explanation that we can provide for you, for example, you will see I'm going to talk about, let's say, Skills USA. So Skills USA has, obviously, you'll see a lot of teachers under the Skills USA because the teaching that they do or the subject that they teach falls under the Skills USA. It's a particular skill that they teach. So, for example, Gilbert Aguilar, he is our law enforcement teacher, whereas Luis Ramirez is the auto mechanics teacher. So they teach a specific skill. So they run after school their own organization or club for competition, and so that's why you see many different Skill USA teachers, because each one of them has their own skill set. Then, for example, FBLA. FBLA is Future Business Leaders of America. Those teachers that you see under FBLA are the business teachers that teach a certain category or certain skill within the business field. So you may have Mark Lucero doing marketing, and you may have Lourdes Mora doing business administration. And then you have HOSA. HOSA is all dealing with the health and medical field. And so Mitch Nelson probably does the sports medicine teaching and skills, whereas, Lucy Rosario does what is it, Denise, that she does? We talked about it earlier.
Health and occupation.
Yes, health and occupation. And so the reason being is that one teacher cannot do all the skill sets, and you may have duplicate in that category. FFA, which is probably between FFA and HOSA, are the largest clubs when it comes to CTE competitions and skill sets. So FFA, we have the 2 ag teachers, and usually they have, I'm just going to give a ballpark figure, let's say about 35 students. And so the requirement is 1 teacher per 10 students. Right now we only have 2 ag teachers. So each one of them does their FFA. So that's why you see multiple, the same word or the same category multiple times.
Thank you.
Is there a job description for these people so that they specifically know what they're going to be doing, what their responsibilities are, or is it just you're the sponsor of Skills USA for mechanics, you're for law enforcement? Do they have job descriptions for specific duties and responsibilities to justify that money? Because I know that I know that those things, and if I'm not mistaken, those are required by the Perkins Act, right?
So what I will say, Mr. Bahrain, is that specifically in human resources, where we are the keepers of our duties and responsibilities and job descriptions, we don't per se have a job description for the CTSO of Skills USA or of FSLA. But what I will say that under that guidance of CTE, they each have specific responsibilities that they have to accomplish to do their CTSO work. So we don't have it in HR, but they have specifically something that states under Education Rising, that teacher must complete these certain tasks and responsibilities for that CTSO.
Entertain a motion, we have it on the floor, right? We have a motion on the roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item G, discussion action on the approval of volunteers. Ms. Samaniego?
As presented, these are, we always have college math students who are willing to tutor and part of some of their classes that they take. So these are 3, and I'm not very sure how it's going to happen this year, but they probably are going to do some tutoring virtually.
Entertain a motion to.
I move to approve the volunteers.
By Mr. Lindeman, second.
Second.
By Dr. Gomez. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item H, discussion action on the approval of donations for the Douglas Unified School District. Ms. Samaniego?
Okay. As presented, most of the donations here are coming from APS, so we are very appreciative and thankful to APS for allowing, I want to say about 20-some teachers to receive a $500 gift card towards school supplies. And these were like random drawings that APS has done, and they've done it for several years already, in addition to 3 other teachers getting some money from different organizations.
Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the donations received.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sabal. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes, we looked at all those addendums a while ago, and then I look at these donations and some of the activities that these are involved in. We have a competition in the spelling bee, right? And that's district-wide. Do we have a sponsor for that program?
It usually falls under the responsibilities of the curriculum department. And so, for example, when Mrs. Cox was there, she always oversaw that and ran it. In the last few years, Ms. Nicole Mariscal kind of assisted and kind of led the spelling bee for the district. So we don't have one paid sponsor or anything like that.
You know, it's a showcase competition, and it takes a lot of work. And I know that you mentioned the young lady that helped tremendously with the Berry girl when she was here.
Yes.
I think that the district and the board should consider, it is a competition, there's a lot of work goes into it. Just someone that puts that on in that department, everybody else gets an addendum, you should look at that as well, I think. Item, Ed, did we have a motion? Did we?
Yes, your request.
Okay, I, discussion action on the approval of the AP Biology and CTE Business Management textbook adoptions for Douglas High School. Ms. Samaniego.
Okay, as presented, we have 2 textbooks that went through the textbook adoption process. We followed all the guidelines and procedures and the timelines as specified in the background information. So the first book is the AP Biology, and the second one is for CTE Business Management. The first book, AP Biology, obviously has a little bit higher cost, and that is coming from capital. And the next book is a lot less, and that is being paid out of CTE funds.
Entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the
Mr.
textbook
Lindeman,
adoptions.
second.
Second.
Dr. Gomez, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item J, discussion action on the approval of the Arizona Department of Education Food Program Permanent Service Agreement for School Food Authority. Ms. Samaniego.
This is routine practice, and due to the pandemic and school closures this year, we are continuing to utilize the National School Lunch Program and using the summer food program as approved by AD. So they just need us to sign the new agreement.
Entertain a motion to
I
approve.
move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman,
Second.
by Mr. Sabal. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item K, discussion action on the approval of select bidders for new space at Douglas High School. Ms. Samaniego.
As presented, Mr. Soto was part of the committee that went through this whole bidding process and scored and selected the 5 firms.
Do you want to give us any information?
Yeah, just a brief explanation is we look at several companies that are willing to bid on the addition to the high school. And we went through a whole day of a process of selecting just the 5 that we will really like to get bids from. So I don't have the exact date of when they're going to be submitting the bid, but after we receive all of them, then we're going to select just the one that we will work on that construction.
That's pretty pro forma. I mean, you meet with them, you have to follow USFR,
Correct.
all that stuff.
Correct.
So entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
By Mr. Lindeman.
Second, Sabal.
Second by Mr. Sabel. Any discussion?
I just had one question, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Soto. This is not something that we could have bid for local contractors or anything.
Well, they were, if they wanted to, they could.
Oh, okay.
So it was open for anybody that wanted to be part of. We actually got a couple of local vendors in the initial process, but I mean, unfortunately, they weren't able to kind of show some more interest about the process. But it was open for anybody that wanted to apply.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got a question.
Go ahead, Dr.
Okay, and that, because, they have to have a certain amount of resources
And
to
bonding
be able
capacity.
to bid this type of thing, right?
Correct.
Now, will you be in consultation with the architect and those other 2 gentlemen that
Yes,
came?
this actually committee was with the architect and the project manager and myself. We were the one that selected these companies. And now, in addition, once we select one of these companies, most likely they will need some local labor anyways. So
Yes.
we're probably going to be employing some people locally anyways.
Okay.
Mr. Ramos or Mr. Sabel, you have any questions?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soto. Alma, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bering?
Yes. Item M, discussion action on the approval of the 01 Class Light Fund. Ms. Samaniego?
Yes, as presented. So this is something we've got to do every year. As you know, qualifying members, certified members obtain 301 monies. And what we have to do today, or you have to approve, is the percentages of where these monies are getting paid from. Background information is there. Mr. Soto, do you have anything more to add? 40%. So it's the 40 pot, 20, and 48% subsections or sections of the pot of money. And then including is also that subsection H, which allows us to use some of those portion of money for those non-qualifying certified personnel or teachers under subsection H. Monies distributed from the classroom site fund shall be spent for the following maintenance and operation purposes. And the section that we've used is for teacher development. And so each year the school district governing board must adopt a performance-based compensation system to allocate the funding for the site fund.
Okay, again, every year we discuss this, we need to be specific. So tell us who's included, who's not included,
Okay.
and then how you want this to be
Allocated, okay. So the first pot of money, or the classroom performance pay comes out from 3 pots of money, right? And we have 40% is the first pot, and it's for the monies, for teacher compensation increases based on performance and employment-related expenses. Only classroom teachers with a valid Arizona teaching certificate who spend at least 50% of the time in the classroom are eligible for this pot of money. And then I'll explain who those teachers are. The 20% of the monies are for teachers' base salary increases and employment-related expenses. Again, only the teachers with a valid teaching certificate who spend at least 50% of the time with students. And then the last pot is 40% of the monies for maintenance and operation purposes as prescribed in subsection H of this section. So out of that 40%, that third pot of money is where we would take a portion of that to go to the teacher development individuals that work in our district. So who is a teacher with a certificate and works 50% of the time? The teachers that qualify are obviously all of our classroom teachers because they spend 50% of the time. Now, they do have to have a valid teaching certificate. Our counselors, who also have a valid teaching certificate and work with students 50% of the time. And am I missing another category? That is it, just the teachers and counselors. And then, obviously, we have another group of individuals who fall under the category of subsection H, and those are our instructional coaches because they work on teacher development. And the only thing that differs between them two is the fact that they don't work with the students 50% of the time, but under subsection H, they qualify under teacher development.
For clarification, long-term subs
No.
and emergency certificates are not included.
They are, an emergency teacher certificate is a teacher with a certificate from ADE. So it's an approved Arizona teaching certificate. Even though it's a emergency teacher certificate.
And they're not regular contracted teachers.
Yes, they are.
Okay. Entertain a motion to approve
Yeah.
as presented.
I move to approve as it presented.
Second?
Second?
That's by Dr. Gomez. So everybody that you mentioned and the way you defined everything, those are the ones that are going to get it, and the 40% out of Section H are the TOSAs, correct?
Yes.
All right, any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabar?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes. Item N, we have the discussion action on the approval of the governing board. Just adopt the evaluation as it was presented. I don't think we need any discussion. It's there just for informational purposes. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the board self-evaluation.
I move to approve.
By Mr. Lindemann,
Second.
by Mr. Sabal. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes.
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabar?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Burring?
Yes. Item O, discussion action on the approval of the superintendent's performance goals. Ms. Samaniego.
As I have to present to you on a yearly basis, goals for this year are obviously a little bit different for me, being that we have a very different school year, and so I felt that a lot of my emphasis and focus is on our distance learning and making sure that all of our students and staff are safe. So goal number 1 is just realizing the importance of communication and transparency. Superintendent will implement a comprehensive program to continue the open lines of communication between district and all stakeholders, and to include any of the following. So periodic briefings and or summary reports that highlight progress towards attainment of DUSD goals, using social media to improve communication to parents and students, periodic school town hall meetings, and those may be virtually at the moment. Ensure communication occurs in all directions at all levels, governing board, administrators, teachers, support staff, schools, students, and parents. Have greater use of our district school website as form of communication. Websites should be and will be updated regularly with the most current up-to-date information, and always participate as a visible part of our community and representative of the district in different activities as specified there. Performance goal number 2 is obviously a big component of this year, and where a lot of my energy and focus is on is assessing our distance learning platform. Reviewing attendance data, assessing our academic and curriculum data, gathering comprehensive information from teachers, students, and parents. Meet regularly with reopening school task force committees, provide regular reports to governing board, visit schools regularly, and obviously give updates on our distance learning plan. And performance goal number 3, ensure that all schools are implementing safe learning environments in regards to COVID-19 protocols and CDC guidelines, and to include any of the following. So obviously developing new and expanding existing partnerships to deliver counseling services to students in need, form a district-wide COVID-19 task force, which we have, continue working with the administrative team and community partners to deliver professional development for faculty and staff on COVID-19 safety protocols, establish COVID-19 protocols, ensure all schools have adequate PPE equipment, restructure school schedules to ensure lower class sizes, and provide training on COVID-19 trauma and social emotional indicators. And then performance goal number 4 is something that I started and since I became superintendent, and that is just continue working with our district administration and in providing professional learning communities. And how we do that is have principal biweekly meetings, leadership networks, principal one-on-one visits, provide professional development, work closely with the assistant superintendent, and having instructional rounds with our school leaders. So this is everything I do with our leadership group.
Okay,
And those
very
are my
good.
goals.
Entertain a motion to approve those goals
I move to approve the goals.
by Mr. Lindeman,
Second,
by Mr.
Sabal.
Sabal. Any
I just
discussion?
have a question.
Sure, yeah.
Last year, did you have 4 goals? Also?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So,
And just to comment quickly, those are dictated actually by the prevailing circumstances, and
yeah.
they're all very realistic. So, roll call.
Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. Lindemann?
Yes.
Mr. Sabal?
Yes.
Dr. Gomez?
Yes.
Mr. Bereen?
Yes. Item 4, discussion on request for future agenda items. Members of the board, Mr. Sabal, Mr. Ramos. Announcements, Ms. Samaniego.
I just know we have our next governing board meeting would be in December what is
First,
it, the 1st. And again, I will be bringing the possibility of starting a hybrid program or more information so that we could do that in January.
Did Mr. Soto mention a special board meeting for the budget revision?
yeah.
And I will work with him if they have all the data needed in order to do the budget revision prior to the December 1st, then we would call a special board meeting. And if not, it would be.
In addition to, we also have another report that we have to submit to ADE by November 20th. And they just gave us access yesterday, of course. So that's why we couldn't bring it to this board meeting. So that's why I'm thinking on doing that report and the revision, if possible, by November 19th, since we have to submit on the 20th to the state. And if there's any other items that we can add, of course, we.
Is that a
can-
Tuesday?
No, but we can move it to a Tuesday if you
okay.
want. I think the 19th is a Thursday, the 20th is Friday for sure. But we can move it if we have all of the info by then,
Okay.
of course. Yeah.
Would that be possible to have it at noon?
Oh, sure.
We can do it at any time, yeah.
Yeah, okay. You know, you guys decide, but if we can have it earlier, I mean, in the day.
Yeah.
That's always best.
Yeah, even if the Friday works best for you, we can do that at noon if that way we have time to submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to
By
adjourn.
Mr. Lindeman,
Second.
by Dr. Gomez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.